하늘길로 돌아옵니다. 머나먼 타국에서 가슴 깊이 그리던 조국. 대한민국의 품으로 우리 동포들이 돌아오는 그날이 오면 배웅한 곳에서 맞이하겠습니다.
In our headlines on this Friday, October 18th. The Hamas militant believed to be the mastermind behind the appalling October 7th assault against Israel is killed during an exchange of fire in Gaza back on Wednesday. Meanwhile, in Korea, domestic demand appears to be en road to recovery, but the pace remains varied depending on sector, according to latest assessment by the Finance Ministry. Also, on the local front, author Kang was at an award ceremony earlier on Thursday here in capital Seoul, marking a first encounter with the public since being named a Nobel laureate. We start over in the Middle East today. The top target of Israel's military operation in Gaza, Yahya Sinwar, has been killed. Our Lee Sing-jae has the latest.
On October 7th, 2023, Palestinian militant group Hamas launched an attack against Israel, which left hundreds of Israelis dead and many more injured. The man believed to be behind the deadly attacks that sparked the current conflict in the Middle East is Yahya Sinwar. However, on Thursday, Israel confirmed that the Hamas leader had been killed in an operation in southern Gaza. According to CNN, an Israeli drone flying over Gaza spotted Sinwar's body in the rubble of a building struck by an Israeli tank. Israeli officials say they ran DNA tests and used dental records to confirm that it was Sinwar. In response to the death of Sinwar, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the moment marked the beginning of the day after Hamas, calling on those holding Israelis captive to surrender and return the hostages, promising safety for those that do so. He also vowed Israel will continue to fight, saying it will continue with all its strength to bring back the hostages taken by Hamas last year. Washington responded to the death of Sinwar, calling it a very significant day in the Middle East. According to White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, Sinwar was a massive obstacle to peace. He said now that obstacle had been removed, U.S. President Joe Biden looked forward to speaking to Netanyahu about how to secure the return of the hostages and to end the war. Sullivan voiced hope that the recent events would bring about a better day for the people of Gaza and Israel, as well as the entire region, adding that the U.S. is committed to doing everything in its power to help contribute to that. Lee Sing-jae, Arirang News.
Over in Brussels, addressing members of the media following a meeting with his EU counterparts, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has reiterated his concerns about North Korean troop presence in Russia's war against his country. Our Shin Ha-young has details.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy said that North Korea is preparing to send about 10,000 soldiers, including tactical personnel, to Russia to aid in the war against Ukraine.
We know about 10,000 soldiers of North Korea that they are preparing to send fight against us. This is really urgent thing.
His remarks were made at a press conference in Brussels following the EU summit on Thursday local time. Referring to military intelligence sources, Zelenskyy noted that although the exact number is uncertain, the North has already sent tactical personnel and officers to Russian-occupied Ukrainian territories. He pointed out that due to troop losses, Russia is trying to involve other participants in the war against Ukraine as many young Russians seek to avoid conscription. He warned that North Korea's support to Russia is the first step to a world war and added that he had discussed the issue with U.S. officials and EU leaders during the summit. Regarding the matter, South Korea's Vice Defense Minister Kim Jongun, who is visiting NATO headquarters, said support in the form of civilian personnel instead of troops is also possible. Kim added that it will become clearer once more information is gathered and evaluated. Russian media dismissed Zelensky's claim of North Korean troop deployments as lies made up to attract Western attention and support. On Thursday, Zelensky pitched his victory plan to the European Union and NATO, which calls for an immediate NATO membership invitation.
Either Ukraine will have nuclear weapons, and then this is defense for us, or we should have some kind of an alliance.
After facing controversy over his remarks about nuclear weapons, he clarified that Ukraine is not developing nuclear weapons and that he meant there is no stronger security guarantee than joining NATO. 신하영, Arirang News.
And in this part of the world, North Korea's Kim Jongun has taken to fresh bellicose rhetoric against South Korea amid the regime's designation of Seoul as a hostile state. Our correspondent Kim Jong-sil covers his latest comments and the response here.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un points at a large map on the table. Though the map is blurred, the word Seoul is visible at the top. A TV screen behind him shows a map of the Korean peninsula with a thick blue line drawn near what appears to be the military demarcation line. The photos, released by the North state-run Korean Central News Agency on Friday, also included Kim's remarks during his visit to the command of the 2nd Army Corps the day before. Kim referred to South Korea as a foreign, enemy state and threatened to use military force without conditions if South Korea infringes on North Korean sovereignty. Seoul's Ministry of Unification reiterated its position on Friday.
We warn that any provocation from North Korea will be met with a strong response backed by the powerful ROK-US alliance.
The North's leader also mentioned the destruction of the cross-border roads, stating that it signifies more than just a physical closure and serves as a symbol of the complete severance of bad blood with Seoul.
The term Seoul ultimately carries the significance of the Blue House in the past and now the presidential office. The North is sending a message that it will target Seoul, including the presidential office, if UAVs were to distribute leaflets again.
Seoul neither confirmed nor denied its involvement with the alleged unmanned aerial vehicles. The KCNA also carried statements from Kim Yo-jong, who criticized reports by South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff accusing Pyongyang of using footage of the North's road demolitions taken by the South Korean military without authorization. Kim Yo-jong claimed that the South, too, has used KCNA media footage without authorization.
Vice Department Director Kim Yo-jong's claims of copyright infringement are completely groundless. Our media uses KCNA materials legally by paying royalties through a Japanese intermediary. It is in fact North Korea that has been using our content without permission.
Deputy spokesperson Kim added that North Korea should act responsibly as a member of the Berne Convention, the international treaty for copyright protection. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
And the top military officers of South Korea and the US have condemned the military cooperation between North Korea and Russia. The condemnation was shared virtually earlier on this Friday at the 49th Military Committee meeting, during which they also underscored that such cooperation disrupts not simply the stability on the Korean peninsula, but also that of the broader international community. Admiral Kim Myung-soo, in particular, shed grave light on North Korea's persistent provocations, including its floating of waste-carrying balloons into South Korea and the regime's recent designation of South Korea as a hostile state. Meanwhile, come Sunday, South Korea will launch an annual defense drill amid heightened tensions on the Korean peninsula. The Hoguk exercise, involving all branches of the armed forces here and the U.S. Forces Korea, will run for about 3 weeks until November 8th. Led by the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the exercise seeks to enhance joint operational capabilities and military readiness. The exercise this year will mobilize an expanded number of service members and equipment as North Korea escalates its hostile rhetoric. Domestic demand appears to be on road to recovery, but the pace remains varied depending on sector. Now, this is according to the Finance Ministry's latest assessment. Our correspondent Moon Hae-ryeon reports.
South Korea's economy continues to recover primarily due to strong export performance, while domestic consumption is showing gradual signs of improvement. That's according to the latest Economic Green Book, a monthly economic assessment report released by the Finance Ministry on Friday.
Our economy continues to recover, led by exports and manufacturing, with price stability improving. Domestic demand is gradually picking up, mainly in facility investment and services, but recovery rates vary across sectors.
The government has been consistently diagnosing domestic consumption as showing signs of recovery since May, citing improvements in the services sector among other factors. However, it has also noted a disparity between the recovery of exports and domestic demand. Service production increased by 0.2% in August compared to the month before, marking the third consecutive month of growth. Retail sales, an indicator of consumer spending, were also up by 1.7% month-on-month. However, compared to the same month last year, retail sales decreased by 1.3%, showing an ongoing downward trend. The government reported that it expects an increase in retail sales to be tallied for September due to recorded growth in credit card spending and domestic car sales, also noting that the Chuseok holiday and the release of the new iPhone series could have an impact. While domestic demand has shown mixed signals, exports continue to perform well on the back of the booming IT sector. Exports increased by 7.5% in September, marking 12 consecutive months of growth. Driven by strong export performance, manufacturing production also increased by 4.1% in September compared to the previous month, and by 3.8% compared to the same period last year. The government maintained its assessment that inflation is stabilizing. Consumer prices rose by 1.6% year-on-year in September, marking the first time since March 2021 that the growth rate has fallen below 2%. The government identified potential risks, including concerns about a global economic slowdown and fluctuations in commodity prices. The ongoing conflict in the Middle East, such as between Israel and Iran, could lead to volatility in international oil prices. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Samsung Electronics has topped this year's Future Brand Index. The Future Brand Index is an annual analysis that ranks the top 100 global firms by market capitalization based on brand perception power rather than their financial power. Samsung reportedly ranked first by creating a loyal customer base through continuous innovation and reliability. Back in 2014, when the index was first released, Samsung ranked 5th. In other news, the fresh global spotlight on the literary works of author Kang has many industry insiders and readers alike hoping for a fresh boost of broader interest in the art of reading and more. Our An Sung-jin explains.
The first Asian woman to win the Nobel Prize for Literature, author Kang is being praised as Korean literature's equivalent of K-pop's BTS, both leading figures that reflect Korean culture in the world.
I think this is very nice because I think Korean literature is very good and deserves more recognition, especially abroad.
Seeing an Asian female author in this generation win an award, and especially the Nobel Prize, is such a big thing, and I do think it's a really big gateway for a lot of females and a lot of minorities to.
As well as garnering attention outside of Korea, Han is igniting a small light that is bringing positive change, especially in the printing and publishing industry. This printing company, which had been seeing a decrease in revenue over recent years, has suddenly seen a surge in the number of copies printed.
Kang's novels are flying off the shelves after her Nobel Prize win. This printing company has been working day and night to meet the demand.
After the announcement, staff at this company have turned in their weekend to cater to the requests.
I feel great and thankful to her. I hope more authors get the chance so the publishing company can become even more dynamic. With fewer people reading books these days, I'm hoping this will turn things around.
Written in Korean, her books are easily approachable and enjoyable for domestic readers.
I felt proud as a Korean because I was able to read the book in Korean without having to worry about understanding the nuance or the meaning like other award-winning books.
Kang's win is a milestone for Korean literature, but some say more is needed to be done to really develop Korean literature.
I think it's necessary to foster a reading culture which allows people to read and buy books at libraries or bookstores for more occasions like these. It's important because I think Korea still lacks that bit.
Many in the literature industry hope that her Nobel Prize win will rejuvenate the fiction market and potentially even lead to a new boom. Han Sung-jin, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, author Kang was at an award ceremony earlier on Thursday here in Seoul, marking a first encounter with the public since being named a Nobel laureate. Our Choi Soo-young has more.
On Thursday, South Korean author Kang, the country's first Nobel Prize in Literature, attended the 18th Pony Jong Innovation Award ceremony for her first public appearance since the Nobel Prize announcement.
The past week, so many people celebrated as if it were their own achievement. I will remember that as a deeply touching experience. Since I connect with the world through my writing, I want to keep writing and meeting readers, just as I have done so far.
After the Nobel Prize announcement, Han declined all press conferences and interviews except for a short interview with the Swedish media outlet SVT. She made her first appearance to receive the Pony Jong Innovation Award. The award was established in 2006 and is given to individuals or groups who bring positive change to Korean society through innovative thinking. The Pony Jong Foundation had already chosen Han as the winner of September 19th, and it was known that she had planned to attend even before the Nobel Prize announcement. The foundation explained that she was selected for her deep exploration of the human soul and her powerful ability to evoke emotions that captivate readers worldwide. Previous winners of the award include Hwang Dong-hyuk, director of the Netflix series Squid Game, Cho Sung-jin, the first Korean to win the Chopin competition in 2015, and former UN Secretary General Pan Ki-moon. Kang also mentioned that this year marks her 30th year of writing, and she's currently working hard to finish a novel she started earlier this year, aiming to complete it by the first half of next year. She added that in the next 6 years, before she turns 60, she hopes to complete 3 more books. Choi Soo-young, Arirang News.
A Korean survival show involving celebrity chefs and their lesser-known counterparts on Netflix has been reviving taste buds across the globe, as well as a stronger fan base for the contestants. Our culture correspondent Song Yoo-jin spoke to one of them to take a listen.
나에게는 에드워드라는 미국 이름이 있지만 저는 한국 이름도 있어요. 나에게 한국 이름은 균입니다. 그래서 이 요리는 이균이 만들었어요.
It looks like tteokbokki, Korea's beloved street food, but it's actually a creamy semifreddo paired with a drink made of Korean melon, minari, and makgeolli. Chef Edward Lee's final creation on Netflix's Culinary Class Wars is a symbol of the journey he's embarked on throughout the show. So why did the winner of Iron Chef America and White House State Dinner guest chef choose to return to competition? In an exclusive interview with Arirang News, Chef Lee explains why.
I've been lately sort of rediscovering a lot of my Korean food heritage. And it just so happened that around the same time, it was a way for me to tell a personal story.
Chef Lee's culinary journey began and flourished in New York before moving to Kentucky and later Washington, D.C. Though he has spent most of his life in the U.S., his connection to Korea has always remained strong.
Even when I wasn't cooking Korean food, I always use Korean flavors, whether it's gochujang or doenjang or kanjang or, you know, the things. I grew up eating my grandmother's Korean food, and I think that's just part of my DNA.
Culinary Class Wars gave Chef Lee a unique chance to reconnect with that heritage through food. Throughout the show, he challenged himself to step away from his comfort zone, Southern American cuisine, and mostly try dishes he'd never cooked before.
The culture of Korea seems so far away, but it's really not. And it's also part of my culture too. There's a lot of people who have been saying, especially Korean Americans, who have been saying that I've never seen my story told on TV in such a big stage.
Cooking has been Chef Lee's dream since he was 10 years old. But over the years, it has evolved into something much more meaningful.
There's something just magical about being in a room full of people eating and smiling and laughing and having conversations. And I think you don't get that energy anywhere else.
So, what's next for the celebrated chef? He isn't planning to slow down anytime soon to get his job done.
Ultimately, my job as a chef is to bring happiness to people. And if I can continue to do that, then I've done my job.
Edward Lee started Culinary Class Wars as the world-renowned chef many of us know. But by the end, he has revealed something deeper to the world. He's not just Edward Lee. He's Edward Kyun Lee.
요즘에 너무너무 행복하고 너무 감사합니다.
송유진, 아리랑 뉴스.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. We begin today in Somalia's capital, Mogadishu, where a suicide bomber detonated an unidentified device at a cafe outside a police training school on Thursday, killing at least 7 and injuring 6 others. Somali police said the bomber, allegedly disguised as a soldier, entered the establishment located outside the General Kahiye Police Academy and detonated a bomb when questioned by people suspicious of his identity. The 7 killed on Thursday included police officers, soldiers, and civilians. Later the same day, Al-Qaeda-linked militant group Al-Shabaab published a statement online claiming responsibility for the attack. Now, Al-Shabaab has previously claimed responsibility for multiple terror attacks in Somalia, including the attack on a public beach that killed 37 people in August. Moving on to Bangladesh, where the country's International Crimes Tribunal issued an arrest warrant for former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina on Thursday for her alleged involvement in crimes against humanity during the violent protests that erupted earlier this year, where hundreds were killed. 77-year-old Hasina, who controlled the country for more than 20 years, was ousted by mass protests in August and fled to India. The ICT's chief prosecutor said Hasina was in control of those who committed massacres, killings, and crimes against humanity in July to August, and ordered the arrest of Hasina to appear in court in November. The protests began as a student-led movement against government job quotas, but a deadly escalation left over 1,000 people dead, according to Bangladesh's interim health ministry. In India now, where police reported Thursday that at least 25 people died and many others were hospitalized after consuming tainted illicit liquor in the country's eastern state of Bihar. Authorities say 22 suspects had been arrested for alleged involvement in production and sale of the tainted liquor. Bihar state banned the sale and purchase of liquor in 2016. Now, deaths from consuming illegally produced liquor are not rare in India, with 57 people killed by toxic bootleg alcohol in the country's southern state of Tamil Nadu in June. Excitement filled Manhattan's Javits Center on Thursday as this year's New York Comic-Con opened its doors to cosplayers from around the world. With hundreds of thousands expected to attend the 4-day event, it was already filled with attendees cosplaying as their favorite characters from comic books, movies, and TV shows. The event's director, Christina Rogers, called the 2024 edition the first true, full event back from the pandemic, adding that this year had improved accessibility, including the free live stream of several top panel sessions. Kim Jongun, Arirang News.
Tomorrow there will be heavy autumn rain, western winds across the country. The rain will stop around the central region and southern coastal areas tomorrow morning. Currently, a preliminary warning of heavy rain has been issued in the eastern parts of Gangwon-do province and some southern coastal areas. A heavy rain warning is already in place on Jeju Island. Eastern parts of Gangwon-do province will receive up to 120 millimeters of heavy rain by the end of tomorrow, and over 100 on the south coast areas of Gyeongsang-namdo province. Other areas such as Seoul are expected to see a high amount of rainfall of up to 60 to 80 millimeters. In high mountainous areas of Gangwon-do province, where temperatures are low, there is a possibility that the first snow will fall. Tomorrow morning will start chilly at 16 degrees Celsius in Seoul. Highs will move up to 21 in Seoul, Gwangju, Daegu, and Gyeongju. It will be mostly sunny on Sunday, but the coldest weather of this fall is expected with the morning temperature in Seoul dropping to 9 degrees. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Right, those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up now is our panel session with members of the media.
오래전 바닷길로 떠났던 당신이 세상 역경을 이기고 대한민국의 힘이 되어 하늘길로 돌아옵니다. 머나먼 타국에서 가슴 깊이 그리던 조국. 대한민국의 품으로 우리 동포들이 돌아오는 그날이 오면 배웅한 곳에서 맞이하겠습니다.
어서오세요. 여러분의 추억을 소환시켜드리는 JD1의 심플리 가요 톱10입니다. 다들 가슴 한편에 품고 있는 추억의 노래 한 곡쯤 있으시죠? 오늘은 제가 90년대 레전드 가요들을 소개해드리겠습니다. 아, 맞아요. 이 곡을 빼놓을 수가 없죠. 모든 아이돌의 우상 H.O.T 선배님의 캔디. 신기념 퍼포먼스로 가요계의 센세이션을 일으켰었는데요. 그 인기가 여전히 식을 기미를 보이지 않는 레전드 곡입니다. 뭐라고요? 항상 팬 여러분들 곁에 있어달라고요. 90년대 대표 걸그룹 핑크 선배님의 영원한 사랑. 아직도 가요계 후배들이 많이 리메이크하고 있는 K-POP 역사상 길이길이 남을 명곡들인데요. 이렇게 화려한 라인업들 사이에서 제가 꼽은 최고의 곡은 두구두구두구두구두구두구 언타이트 선배님의 책임져. 이번에 제가 JD1만의 스타일로 재탄생시킨 곡인데요. 1996년의 책임져를 2024년 심플리로 소환해볼까요? 그렇게 망친 내 인생 책임져. 본격적으로 그때 그 시절 속으로 푹 빠져들 준비 되셨나요? Then this week, 심플리 컨투어, Don't miss out.
Presiding over Monday's cabinet meeting following his latest diplomatic agenda in New York, President Seoul South Korea's economy will grow. The central bank has kept its key interest rate unchanged. Mission complete for rocket booty South Korea. Seoul is rallying in hopes of bringing the World Expo 2030.
아리랑.
31주년 헌터 뮤직 어워즈 2023
31주년 헌터 어워즈에 이렇게 많은 분들께서 관심을 가져주셔서 너무 감사드리고
전 세계가 함께 즐기는 진정한 음악 축제 한터 뮤직 어워즈 2023. 그런 K-팝 아티스트의 멋진 무대 다 같이 즐길 준비 되셨나요?
K-drama, the charm of Korea that captivates the world. Love like a K-drama. A story of us where hope and despair coexist. Fun and refreshingly satisfying. K-dramas carry warmth and move people's hearts. Meet the fascinating stories of Korea through K-dramas.
An 81-year-old elegant contestant won the Best Dressed award at this year's Miss Universe Korea pageant, and she's been making headlines here and elsewhere for her poise and passion to prove that age is just a number. We have details on Press Perspective today. Hello and welcome to Press Perspective for this Friday, October 18th here in South Korea. I'm Min Sun-hee. A growing number of senior Koreans are seeking to take roads not taken by their earlier counterparts as they choose to venture onto runways and into rapping. For more on this, I have Yang Chen-hao, a Taiwanese journalist based here in Seoul. Chen-hao, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, hello, I'm very glad to be here.
I also have Sebastian, a correspondent for French daily Le Figaro. Sebastian, welcome.
Thank you for your hospitality.
Right. Chen-hao, we'll start with you. How do you explain the international interest garnered by Korea's most glamorous granny, as BBC described her?
Indeed, I'm not surprised, and I'm very glad to see this being discussed. I think the reason that it attracts people's attention is because many well-developed countries are all facing the problems of aging society. So what kind of the role that the elder generation can play will definitely become an issue, especially that we talk about beauty, we talk about charisma, and it is very easy that you're going to be excluded when you're getting old. So, and also in Taiwan and in South Korea, or even in European countries, you can often see that, especially on the mainstream media, like tabloid newspapers. They often describe superstars or famous, well-looking actors or singers when they are getting old, they're having wrinkles, and some you can see some descriptions saying that their faces are collapsing or that they are not beautiful anymore. That has caused more bias or stereotypes, indeed, when only judge on people's outlooks based on the changing of their age. So, and most of the people, they want to look pretty and they don't want to listen to this kind of criticism, and because we're all getting old year by year. So you can see the contradictions do exist. But since now South Korea has entered into aging society, and we are only going to have more and more older people. Also, those people, after they enter into their 60s and 70s, they retire. They have more free time, so they want to have more kind of achievements. So I regard the Mrs. Choi Soon-hwa, the so-called glamorous granny's case, not only the breakthrough, but also a kind of demonstration, drawing people's attention to what kind of mind or attitude we should have toward aging and toward the old people. Idealistically, I would hope that people seeing aging as just like leather. When we buy a pair of like former leather shoes or leather bags, it's just new. It's nothing special. But if you worn it or if you carry them, they will have scratches and they might have wrinkles. And it was always being seen as a symbol of beauty and charisma. So I do hope that human could also be seen like that.
Right, and perhaps expanding then on what Chen Hao has said, Sebastian, do you suppose that the reality that Korea is one of the world's fastest aging societies has actually perhaps shed greater light on Choi Soon-hwa's participation in this beauty contest?
Absolutely. You know, we as journalists, this is an open secret. When we write, we need some what we call a hook. And I mean, this story of the granny is a wonderful hook for journalists like us to write about a more substantial issue, which is the aging society, the fast-aging society that Korea is becoming. And it is now very well known that Korea has the lowest birth rate in the world, and this has caught the attention around the world. I can see we all have been reporting on this, and this is grabbing the attention of the audience globally because, of course, the most advanced economy in the world are facing the same thing, and Korea is like a reflection also what's happening elsewhere. So that's grabbed the attention of this story. And yes, the question of how fast Korea is aging is fascinating people, because also Korea being a very tech advanced society, so a society that is at the same time very popular on the cultural front with the Hallyu. There's all these combination mixed of something both very new, very modern, but at the same time already facing some dramatic demographic challenges. So there is this cocktail that is quite vivid and that does catch the attention of the media around the world.
Right, and prior to the attention that has been granted to Choi Soon-hwa, Chen Hao, I believe a while back you actually covered a group of senior Korean men who were generating much buzz online for their chic styles and choreography. Could you share us a bit details about your particular coverage and what were some of your takeaways? Yeah,
they're called the ajoshis. I've covered an interview with them like in 2021 with Thomas Mareska, who is also the very good friend of this program. So I interviewed with Thomas together with the ajoshis, and it was the time when the word of kundae, so-called condescending man, is being widely introduced and discussed internationally. And the ajoshis mostly are there in their 60s. They are already retired, and you can see they are dressing in the fashion way, and they practice how to have poses behind the camera, and they practice dancing and having like short videos. And their manager, Mr. Kwon Chon-hyun, told me that in the beginning he was just planning a so-called new grade project, providing consulting service of dressing to older generation and make like photograph for them. So Mr. Kwon was trying to find models to promote this project, and later a friend of him introduced the ajoshis to him, and he made the ajoshis showing on the social media, and it becoming like a smash hit. So you can see that nowadays, like many like companies, they're trying to invite the ajoshis for like promoting merchandise, and like you can see that on the advertisements anywhere. And what makes me feel impressive is that Mr. Kwon told me that based on his experience, he did sense that some of the younger generation in South Korea, they tend to have a very critical views or even hatred feelings toward the older generation. But if you change their dress code into the more younger or fashion ways, the negative attitude of younger people to the old people decrease. And Mr. Kwon said that he told me that his role and his mission is to change the old people's way of dressing, and then open up a way for the younger people and the old people to have interactions and having dialogues together to eliminate the gap. And that ajoshis told me that indeed it's not only about dressing, it's also that the older generation, they themselves also need to change their mind, trying to let the younger generations know that we are really working hard to try to understand what the younger generations are thinking. So you can see that we can see that it's mutual. Both of the young and old generation have to learn something.
Do you suppose this sentiment between the old and young is largely based then on misunderstanding between the generations?
It's not. I don't think it's misunderstanding. It has some reasons based on the different growing backgrounds. And I'm going to explain
tell us
it more.
A bit about the differences,
because
then.
like as my view, it's something to do not only with only age, but also combining with many factors such as like growing backgrounds and like Confucianism culture and also military dictatorship for over 30 or 40 years in South Korea. Korea is already a society which classes, levels, or patriarchy have played very core roles in the society. And those who are in their 60s and 70s, many of them they experienced a hard time and rebuild of the nation after the Korean War. So they endured a very hard time economically, which they have to earn their livings. And then when the economy was growing, it was the military dictatorship period in the politics, which patriarchy or obeying the higher level become rationalized. Even physical punishment were being seen. It was very common during that time. But if we look at the current young generation in their 20s or 30s, they are living in a more wealthy environment and with democratization and also Hanliu, which also make them more willing to show themselves, to reveal their personal opinions and making decisions together. So that's already a lot of differences, and that cause contradictions between the old generation and the young generation. So that you can see that old generation always like blaming the young generation. Oh, you guys are immature, you guys are inefficient. But the young generation also complaining that, oh, the old people, they are not knowing what the world is going on, and they are being too arbitrary without taking others into consideration. So this kind of problem still exists. I believe that every country around the world have the same problem, but I think that it's definitely more serious in South Korea.
Right, I see. And the dress code then among the senior Korean men that you interviewed called the ajashis was perhaps creating for them a better image within the young.
Yeah, so I do think that for older people, if they start to change themselves on their dress code, that might give them a chance to have more dialogues or conversations to those younger than them.
Right, of course. And this, of course, was based on your coverage.
Yeah.
All right, then. Sebastian, moving forward, dismal birth rates, as you mentioned earlier, and as Chin Hao has touched upon, and Asian communities, they are universal concerns. That being said, what can you tell us about this particular reality in Europe, and how does that compare to the situation here in South Korea?
Well, I would say if you look at the statistics, we are getting into quite a similar territory where actually today Korea, since this year for the first time, you have like more people over 70s than in their 20s. You have almost 20% of the population now that is over 60-year-old, which the UN recognizes as like an aging society. And Korea is moving toward a super aging society. But if you look at this figure in the EU, we are roughly at the same overall. We're around 21%. So it's kind of similar. Of course, there are differences. If you go to Jeollado, already we are in a more aging situation, and if you are in downtown Seoul, but it's the same in Europe. But I think the big difference between Europe and here is maybe looking at the socio-economic status of the old elderly, because basically the elderly in Europe have been witnessing the most extraordinary growth story in the history of the Europe. You know, in the 60s, 70s, 80s. The Europe economy was booming, and they have seen their wealth accumulating a lot. And there's another aspect that is different, is that we also have a very solid welfare state that was established in most EU countries. So today, ironically, the big difference in Europe, the elder population are actually the wealthier. And they are wealthier than the young people. They are the ones who have the most often saving. Of course, there's the issue of retirement, and this is something we can talk about later, but it is challenging for a lot of older people too. But I think in Korea, the issue of economic challenges for the elderly and the issue of poverty among senior citizens is a major issue also. We know also there's a very high suicide rate of senior in Korea, and this is maybe quite a different feature in Europe. Ironically, it's more the young people are complaining that the older people have too good a position, they have too much economic power, and they are struggling to get a job, to live up to the expectation of their parents. So that's, I think, the main difference is the economic, social status that is different in Europe and compared to here.
All right then, and speaking about here then, Sebastian, what are your thoughts with regard to efforts here in the country to better address, of course, falling birth rates and, of course, an aging society?
Well, I mean, I've been like every journalist, we work on this, and when you talk to young people, in Korea, an expert, I mean, we know that the government, the President Yoon Suk-yeol have called a so-called national emergency. They have been announcing a lot of measures to support young families, couples, including a lot of economic support, and of course these are welcome. But when you talk to people why they're not having family, why they're not having kids, the main thing they say is about the mentality in the society, is about competitiveness in the society. They said this society is too competitive, so it's a very stressful, a burden to have a child, a family, because I feel I'm gonna have to raise that kid to get to the best. It's gonna be a competition to the best school, competition to the best place to live. So mentality of competitiveness, generation gap, like Chen Hao mentioned about the tension between younger generation and older generation. I think the younger generation are also rejecting some of the package or the values maybe coming from Confucian society, and they don't want to follow on the same template, but the package is still there, so they are kind of reluctant to embark on this. And then you add one more fracture, I think is the gender fracture between male and female. If you listen to young people in Korea, male and female is increasingly some kind of competition, tension, or lack of dialogue. Even some people claim it's a gender war. Maybe it's an exaggerated term, but it encapsulates this tension. So all these together, I think, are the real core issue that explain why Korea is facing such a dramatic demographic crisis that is really, there's 2 times less birth rate than in Japan. So this is really something spectacular, and around the world, people are really surprised. And the question is whether this is going to become a central debate in society in Korea now, but and in the future election.
Right, especially as we currently face an aging society, of course. Meanwhile, beyond South Korea, Chin Hao, back in July, lawmakers over in Taiwan, they abolished the clause requiring retirement at the age of 65, I believe. Yes. What prompted this particular move, and what has been the response there?
Indeed, there are 2 bills being passed. One is the revision of Middle-Aged and Elderly Employment Promotion Act, which will push the government take more efforts to develop more job opportunities to the orders. And another one is the revision of the Labor Standards Act, which regulates that if the employees if they are reaching the retiring age, he or she can extend working after reaching the agreement of collective bargaining instead of being forced to retire. And without any reasonable causes, the company cannot have any discrimination toward the employees over 65 years old. Indeed, Taiwan has the population of 23 million, and the population over 65 years old is around 4.2 million, which charges around 18%. And if you compare the labor force participation rate of the population over 65 years old with other countries, the result is indeed disappointing. You can see that in South Korea it's 41%, which is like nearly the highest in the Asia countries. And then 32.9 in Singapore, 14.6 in Hong Kong. But in Taiwan, it's only 8.4. So Taiwan, that makes the Taiwanese government trying to find some ways to boost and trying to encourage more like elder generation taking more jobs. But what I need to point out is that for those over 65 years old, yes, if you successfully negotiate with the company, you can still work or extend your contract. But if both sides can't have an agreement, then the employees they still need to retire. So that comes the problem. What if the company insists that the current retiring worker doesn't have enough ability and ask him or she to leave? So then we will need to wait for the arbitration or the judgment from the Ministry of Labor. We believe that this act, the bill, is paved with good intention, but it is predictable that it might have some problems after it is being put into practice. For example, like in South Korea, you have 민주노총 or 한국노총, the labor unions, but in Taiwan, many enterprises or companies, they even don't have labor unions. Then how can you expect strong power of negotiating with the company's owners or employers? And also, every company has different situation. If they are really not affordable or just reject continuing employing, will they face any accusation of discriminating? That is to say that more scheme, more like a system plan will need to be made to protect both sides.
Right. And very briefly speaking, Sebastian, in France, the legal retirement age was raised to 64 from 62, I believe. Could you very briefly tell us about that?
Yes, I mean, this is one of the most contentious issues in France of the last few years, and I would say decade. And it's one of the few, this so-called pension reform, one of the few reforms that President Macron managed to get through, but it was an uphill battle. And this reform is still is entering into force, but it's still a very contentious issue. And the new Prime Minister in France, Michel Barnier, has said he will keep that reform, but he's already talking about amending it or improving it, as he says. But this topic is at the heart of a lot of debate in France, because French public finance are in big trouble. They are under the surveillance of the EU, and we know when we listen to economists that the cost of the pension system is one of the core issues if you want to rebalance the finance in France. And of course, they are saying that 64 is not enough, and if you could raise that retirement age like many other EU countries, that will be a major factor in order to rebalance the public finance in France. Right. So this debate is not going to go away. We're going to have other elections in France, 27, and certainly already some political parties are saying they want to reopen that reform. Some others say we need to go further down. So this is a core issue.
It's an ongoing debate, a very solemn debate that needs, that has yet to see a resolution. Then again, very briefly, but coming back to South Korea, Chen, how a group of rapping grandmothers in their 80s made quite a bit of headlines earlier this year. Now, sadly, one of them passed away at the age of 87 this month owing to cancer. Yes. But her daughter claimed that her mother lived her last few months in heaven, given a chance to be on stage to rap. That raised fresh debate about the quality of life of seniors here in the country. Very briefly, what are your thoughts on the quality of life of seniors here in the country?
I think it's very difficult, and it's also something to do with social welfare system, just like Sebastian just mentioned. Now there are around like 74% of the people join the National Pension Service, the NPS, but there is always like severe concerns that the system might go bankrupt in around like 15 to 20 years. Also, the joining rate of the low income groups is only around 40, which means the social welfare system itself might not be able to protect those who are really in need. And I think it will definitely cause problems when those group of people getting old. The current NPS system is still unstable, and aging speed of South Korea is going far fast. And also recently, not only in Japan, we can see more and more cases of lonely deaths or suicide problem on the news in South Korea. I've covered that. I've seen that many old people, they are they have nowhere to go. They only choose to live in Koshiwon or the Chokbangchon, the small house area, and based on their basic wage or small amount of pension. And also South Korea has experienced the IMF crisis, right? So many people in their, like during that time, 30s or 40s or 50s, they went bankrupt. And this group of people, they are now getting from 50s to 70s, but they are still suffer and they need more help. So they are still struggling, earning their lives. So these need to be taken into consideration.
Right, and hopefully stories like Choi Soon-hwa's participation in the beauty pageant will shed fresh light on the need to deal with the issues faced by the senior citizens here in the country then. Shin-hwa, thank you so much for your time here. And Sebastian, as always, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you very much.
Right, well, that brings us to the end of this week's editions of Press Perspective. As always, thank you for watching.
K-drama, the charm of Korea that captivates the world. Love like a K-drama.